Welcome to our deep dive into a pivotal moment in history, the St. Bartholomew's Day Massacre. We're going back in time to Paris in the 1570s,
Ah,
a
the
city
that.
on edge,
Yeah.
with tension between Catholics and a new group, the Huguenots, French Protestants. By the end of this deep dive,
Hmm.
you'll understand not just what happened, but why it matters even today.
It's easy to think about historical events as just one thing,
Right.
but this massacre was the result of decades of problems.
Okay.
Religious and social upheaval. France in the 1500s was recovering from war.
Oh, wow.
Finances were a mess.
Yeah.
And this new Protestant group was challenging everything.
So I see from the sources that the Huguenots weren't just seen as another religious group.
Exactly. Religion was part of everything back then. Politics, identity. France had this idea.
Oh,
One faith, one king, one law. The king was like the protector of Catholicism.
interesting.
Just by existing, the Huguenots threatened that whole system.
It's like two different worlds
And
clashing.
those clashes could be pretty dramatic. The sources you gave me mentioned the Placards affair in 1534.
Okay.
Imagine waking up and seeing posters everywhere, even on the king's door,
Yeah.
saying terrible things about the Catholic Mass.
That does sound like they wanted to cause trouble. But was it really that offensive? I mean, were they just arguing about the Bible?
It was much more than that.
Okay.
Mass was the center of Catholic life. It was more than a ritual.
Yeah.
Those posters weren't just an argument. They were an attack on their whole way of life.
We think religious freedom is normal today.
Right.
But back then, it wasn't just about what you believed personally.
Yeah, and the Huguenots weren't just a small, quiet group.
No.
They were gaining power.
Oh.
Some French nobles thought they could use the Huguenots
Against.
to weaken the king. So it wasn't just religion. It was power, too.
It's getting complicated.
This made the Catholics even more afraid of the Huguenots.
So we've got this mix of strong religious feelings and ambition,
Yeah.
and neither side wanted to give in. The sources talk about Catherine de' Medici trying to keep things peaceful.
Right. Catherine de' Medici, the Queen Mother, she was in a difficult spot. She tried to handle this religious problem.
Okay.
She organized events like the Colloquy of Poissy in 1561.
What was that?
It was a meeting to find common ground between Catholics and Protestants.
That sounds promising. Did it work?
No, sadly.
Mm.
Neither side wanted to compromise.
Oh.
Both Catholics and Huguenots thought they were right and would win in the end. The colloquy and other attempts failed. Catherine even made official rules to give Huguenots some freedom.
Really?
But that didn't work either, just made people more angry.
That's tough. It's like trying to make peace between two groups that are totally sure they have the only right answer.
You got it. This led to a bunch of terrible religious wars.
Or
Each one ended in a shaky peace that didn't fix anything.
it sounds like it was just getting worse.
Yeah.
The sources make Paris sound like it was the main place against the Huguenots.
Yes.
Was it that much different from the rest of France?
Paris was the center of Catholic power. The people there were totally against any compromise with the Huguenots.
Wow.
They saw them as a threat to their whole life, even their souls.
That's intense. Are there any specific stories that show this?
There's the story of the Cross of Gastines.
Yeah.
In 1569, two Huguenots, Philippe and Richard de Gastines,
Okay.
they were caught having a secret Protestant service in their house.
Oh.
This was a huge insult to the Catholics because it was like a deliberate act of defiance.
So this wasn't just about different beliefs. It was challenging the established order publicly.
Exactly. The brothers were executed, their house was destroyed, and a big stone cross was built right there.
Oh, wow.
The Cross of Gastines. It became a symbol of Catholic resistance.
This cross built where their house was? It's like a physical sign of the religious divide.
It was. Later, the king said to take the cross down.
Oh, to make peace.
Yes, but the people of Paris refused.
They did.
They even moved it secretly at night to protect it.
That's incredible. Shows how deep these divisions were. They even disobeyed the king.
And this was all happening while Catherine de' Medici was trying to keep the peace.
Which we know didn't always work.
Yeah. One of her attempts was in 1572, a royal wedding.
A wedding.
Her daughter Marguerite was to marry the Huguenot leader, Henri of Navarre.
A royal wedding. What could possibly go wrong? A royal wedding. What could possibly go wrong? History's full of these things that totally backfire.
And this one was no different. Catherine wanted to bring everyone together, but it made things worse.
Yeah.
Remember, Paris was ready to explode?
Right.
The Catholics were already suspicious of the Huguenots, and this marriage felt like a betrayal to many.
So the city's on edge, a wedding makes things worse, and then,
An assassination attempt.
yeah, just days after the wedding, Admiral Coligny, a Huguenot leader, is targeted. What happened after that?
It was unsuccessful, but it shook Paris. Rumors went around that the Huguenots wanted revenge.
Oh, wow.
Fear took over the city. King Charles IX was young, easily influenced by his advisors.
Yeah.
They saw this as a chance to get rid of the Huguenots once and for all.
So instead of calming things down, they pushed for a bigger solution.
Yeah, they convinced the king they had to attack first to prevent a war. They thought if they killed the Huguenot leaders, they could stop any uprising and bring back order. So on the eve of St. Bartholomew's Day, August 24th, 1572, the king made a decision: eliminate the Huguenot leaders.
And that's when it started. Those words, "the king commands it," were the spark.
Exactly. Under cover of darkness, royal guards, many of them Swiss mercenaries,
Okay.
they were sent to kill Coligny and other Huguenot leaders. Coligny was murdered in his home. Many others were killed too.
I can't imagine the terror that night for the Huguenots. They must have felt trapped,
Yeah.
betrayed. But it sounds like the violence didn't stop with just the leaders.
No, it didn't. The planned operation turned into mob violence.
Oh, wow.
Years of anger and religious hate.
Uh-huh.
Plus, they thought they were doing what the king wanted.
Right.
It turned ordinary Parisians into a mob. Huguenots were hunted in the streets, dragged from their homes, and killed.
So it wasn't just about following orders anymore. It was about letting out years of hate.
Yes. It's hard to understand how a city could become so violent.
And it wasn't just random violence, was it?
No, there was a method to it. Catholic preachers had been saying terrible things about the Huguenots for years.
So this wasn't just about politics. It was about getting rid of a religious group they didn't like.
Exactly. The massacre became almost ritualistic.
What do you mean?
They forced Huguenots to give up their faith and say Catholic prayers to be spared. It wasn't just killing, it was purification.
Getting rid of heresy.
Yes, taking back Paris for the Catholics.
The sources are full of awful stories.
It was a terrible time.
And what gets me is how cruel it was, how they targeted women and children.
Yeah.
This wasn't just self-defense or politics. There was something much darker going on.
You're right. It was far more brutal than it needed to be. Pregnant women, infants, no one was safe. This was about destroying the entire Huguenot community.
Leaving no trace of them.
Exactly.
It's hard to grasp the scale of it all. Was it just in Paris or did it spread?
It wasn't just Paris. It was like a disease. It went to other cities all over France.
Wow.
Thousands more Huguenots were killed in towns and villages outside Paris. We don't know the exact number, but historians think between 5,000 and 30,000 people died during and after the massacre.
It's a truly horrifying example of what fear and religious fanaticism can do. This wasn't just a tragedy for the Huguenots. It changed France forever.
Yes, a wound that took a long time to heal.
We need to take a moment to let that sink in.
You're right, the human cost the brutality.
Yeah.
These aren't just facts. They remind us of how dark humans can be.
You, the listener, are probably trying to imagine how this could happen.
It's hard to comprehend.
And in the final part of our deep dive, we'll see how this night of terror affected things for generations to come.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre. We've been talking about the events that led up to this horrific night and the massacre itself.
Yeah.
Now let's look at what happened afterwards and how it affected France and even beyond.
Right after the massacre, the Huguenots were devastated. Yeah, I can imagine.
They were traumatized. Their trust was broken. Thousands left France.
Where did they go?
They went to Protestant countries for safety places like England, Switzerland.
So did the massacre do what it was supposed to do? Did it silence the Huguenots?
It's not that simple.
Really?
The massacre hurt the movement a lot, but it didn't destroy it. You could even say it made them stronger in the long run.
Stronger.
The Huguenots became more militant. They wanted to resist the monarchy even more.
Wow. So instead of crushing them, it made them fight back harder.
Exactly.
It's like the violence just made things worse.
Yeah. And remember, this wasn't just a religious conflict. It had political consequences, too.
Right. The sources I've read say the massacre actually made the religious fighting in France last longer.
That's true.
Yeah.
It was supposed to end the conflict, but it just fueled more wars.
Wow.
And it created deeper political divisions in France.
So it had the opposite effect.
Yeah, it weakened the monarchy.
Yeah.
It was harder for the king to rule and maintain control.
And that lasted for decades.
Yes, the effects went way beyond just religion.
So this event started with religion but changed the politics of France and how it was seen in Europe. What are the big takeaways from all this? What can we learn from this terrible part of history?
The St. Bartholomew's Day Massacre shows us how dangerous intolerance can be.
Yeah.
It shows the power of fear and prejudice and how quickly violence can get out of control when people believe in extreme ideas.
It's a scary thought, but it's still relevant today.
Definitely. We still have religious intolerance, political polarization, abuse of power. These problems are still with us centuries later.
It makes you wonder if we ever really learned from the past.
It's a good question. We could look back at events like this and see what went wrong. But the hard part is using those lessons today.
Yeah.
We need to see the warning signs and try to stop history from repeating itself.
This has been a tough but important deep dive.
It has.
Thank you for joining us as we explored this event and what it means. It reminds us that the choices we make, the things we believe in, and the things we do can have huge consequences.
Yes, they can affect things for a long time.
And while we can't change what happened, we can learn from it.
Exactly.
We can choose to be tolerant, to care about others, and to work toward this deep dive. I have some hope, even though it's been a dark topic.
Me too.
We can make a better future where understanding and kindness are more powerful than fear and hate.
I agree.
Thank you for listening, and let's all remember what we've learned as we move forward.